Hello world, I'm Chris Pirillo and you're watching another live edition of a Q&A with you and me, and I appreciate that. Thank you for tuning in. I tend to talk a lot about certain topics, a wide variety of topics that I find fascinating, and I appreciate when you ask me questions on a regular basis, seemingly about a variety of topics that you think I might be interested in or have an opinion on. Today, I'd like to talk a bit more or put a finer point on what I've been discussing lately. Recently, I've been talking about Samsung and the trouble that it's found itself in. I talked about some initial impressions that other people have had with an operating system that Samsung is pretty much spearheading at this point, which is really an amalgamation of several operating systems kind of combined into one, hence it being an amalgamation. Tizen has promise. Every operating system, every platform has promise. But let's go ahead and give everybody a brief history lesson before I dive into the full answer of answering the question for, I don't know if that made any sense there, can Tizen topple Android? I believe the answer is yes. Tizen can topple Android. Absolutely. But a lot of things are going to happen for that to actually take place. So, Samsung, has been making a series of products for a number of years. I've bragged about my first VCR being from Samsung. It was the best VCR at the time, and it was a champion. It was amazing. Amazing feature set, amazing price. I no longer have that VCR, sadly. I don't really have any need to play back any kind of VHS tape. So Samsung's been at this for a while when Android was available, and a lot of OEMs were using it to build experiences with their own hardware or software and services around. Samsung was the leader with Android and its usage in the field. And right around Q3 2013, that kind of changed. And Samsung's attention that it may have been receiving from people who might have appreciated a good Android experience, or the best one that could have been provided by Samsung, certainly. Samsung just kind of fell out of favor. And it's kind of been on a downward slope since then. That's not to say that Samsung devices aren't as great as they always were. It just means that Samsung has to face certain market realities where they can't continue, or could not continue, really, on their current trajectory. Samsung, I think, realizes this. So, a while ago, Tizen was a promising opportunity for Samsung to be able to take the entire experience in-house, much like Apple's done, or did, or has been doing ever since I can remember, really. Apple was in the clone game for a while, and, I'm not going to get into that part of the history lesson. But Apple builds its own hardware, its own software, it's got its own experience, right? That's what helps make Apple stand out. Samsung doesn't have the same thing, but they have the opportunity to do the same thing. So, you've got Android, right? It's got an amazing wealth of support, brand, momentum. It is a leading player in the mobile space, and certainly beyond if, Google, shows you any specific statistics, because Android can be used in a variety of situations, not just in pocket computers or tablet computers. Tizen could topple Android in the sense that if it's a better experience, and right now initial reports are suggesting it is not, it feels, according to the people who have had hands-on experience, it feels a little half-baked, not quite ready for prime time. I think Samsung recognizes this as well. And so I would expect that Tizen, much like every operating system, should get better over time. Unless, it takes steps sideways, and some operating systems do that, absolutely. But generally speaking, Tizen at least is out there, right? Initially, though, it doesn't seem to be good for Tizen. If Samsung doubles down on not just what they're doing with the hardware, but what they're doing with software optimization beyond Android, they create this better platform for Samsung. They could vicariously be creating a better alternative for people who might be using Apple's products or any product that might be running, let's say, Android, for argument's sake. Because the question is, can Tizen topple Android? So if Samsung makes Tizen better for them, they can put Tizen in everything they have, making them more like a company that Apple is. Can they do it fast enough? I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah, I don't even know if Samsung knows. But the value of that would be, you walk into a store and you see this Samsung product. Oh, that's a nice Samsung. I like the Samsung product, and it has this special feature. If you happen to have this other Samsung product, suddenly it's a compelling argument, right? It's the gateway drug. One product becomes the gateway drug to pulling you into Samsung's ecosystem. Tizen could be their opportunity. And if it's not Tizen, it's got to be something else. Because at this point, for Samsung to take back its market share for Android devices, it's going to take a lot because they've been squeezed in the middle. And that's not a good place to be when it comes to producing products, certainly for the consumer space. And they're doing amazing things. Again, I'm not talking about their technical merit. I'm not slamming Samsung at all. In fact, I'm saying they need to do better because I need more competition. We all need more competition in this marketplace, no doubt about it. Having used Samsung devices in the past, I mean, all the way through to the Galaxy S5. Is that what I had? I showed it the other day when I was talking about what Samsung could do to turn itself around. They could topple Android if Android. This is where I at the beginning of this question, or trying to address it, I was saying a lot of things have to happen. Something has to change with Android too, and I think we're starting to see that. Certain manufacturers are going, well, wait, Google controls a lot of that, and that's becoming Google stuff. We need to figure out our own thing, right? That could happen. There's been talk of fragmentation. I don't really want to speak to that as far as Android versioning is concerned, because I think that's overplayed. I think it's overstated. Yes, there are a lot of Android-driven devices that are not running the latest version of Android. Is that a problem? Perceivably, but Google has kind of attenuated that as an issue by abstracting Google Play services from Android and in the version of Android as an operating system. If you have an Android device, chances are you're having your Google apps that are independent of the platform being updated on a regular basis, a consistent basis. And there, of course, are exceptions to that rule. But Google's done its job, or done its best to this point, to mitigate that as an issue, that kind of fragmentation. I'm talking about the fragmentation of players. Because when you have Samsung having been the leading player in the Android space for the longest time, and it's no longer the leading player, well, someone else is going to step up in its place. And once that player's been played out, someone else is going to step up in its place. And someone else is going to step up in its place. So Android is going to be around for the foreseeable future. That's awesome news. The problem is that if you have so many different versions of Android and so many different products and so many different devices, number one, it creates a lot of confusion in the marketplace. And it creates a lot of different kind of fragmentation. I'm not talking about the fragmentation of Android as an OS. I don't think that's as much of an issue as it was in the past. I'm talking about a fragmentation of attention. If you buy this Android device, it's not equal to another Android device, which is both a benefit and a drawback. Right? You may have heard great things about Android, but if you buy some cheap tablet that's loaded with a whole bunch of crap on it, is that going to be the same experience as you're going to get from a clean, let's say, just a straight-up stock version of Android on a device? No, absolutely not. They're different experiences. This is the same frustration people had with Windows, and I'm not trying to compare Android to Windows directly. There are certainly a lot of correlations that one might be able to draw between the two platforms. But with that amount of fragmentation and confusion, and all it takes is one major player to make a big mistake for people to go, ew, Android did that, when it may not be Android's fault. It's just, it happens to be in the crosshairs, right? Because, oh, it's an Android product and these bad things happened and it was running Android. Well, how many times does that have to happen before people kind of do this with Android? I don't know if I want to trust that, because a lot of bad things have happened around Android. Even if it wasn't every Android manufacturer's responsibility to manage every other Android, OEM, anybody who would use Android to build an experience around. That's not the point. It's pulled in. It's like the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater. I'm not talking about the technical merits of Android outright necessarily either, because I think it's going to get better and better as time goes on. Google has got amazing engineers. So ultimately the fragmentation in the marketplace and the confusion and any other majorly bad things that could happen with Android getting dragged in tow, that could lead, in conjunction with Tizen getting better and more mature as a platform, could lead to Samsung gaining a better adoption, and vicariously, potentially more users. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying that a lot of these things have to happen. Samsung has to get their head screwed on straight. And Google has to make some, Google's partners have to make some major mistakes for any of these things to happen. And could it happen? Absolutely. There may have been a time 10 years ago when someone would have told you, at some point in the future, people are not necessarily going to like Windows or need it as much as they used to in the past. People are not going to need Microsoft Office as much as they needed it in the past. And you may go, what? But Microsoft Office is going to live forever! Viva la XLS! That's the... Okay, I'm not going to explain that to you. If you've made it this far in the video, I assume you know what an XLS file is. Or an XLSX. Now, because they changed formats at some point in the past. And what was that around? Office? I don't know. They're not the same, but, Okay, this isn't about spreadsheets, I swear. Now I think you know why I tend to make these videos live, because I like talking about this stuff. And, there are a lot of areas to cover in this very, very big and broad question. But Tizen at this point is beyond an underdog. I would put Tizen beneath Ubuntu, where Ubuntu sits. And really, they're kind of starting off right around the same point in time. Not exactly in the same way. There's not direct parallels that could be made. But Windows Phone would have a greater chance of adoption, I think, at this stage than Tizen. When you've got a company that controls everything, stem to stern, you have a better opportunity for a better experience. It may not be the most affordable experience, but it may be an overarching better experience. The sum is greater, though I always mess this up. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And that speaks directly to that experience. And so I think it could happen. But I think for it to happen, it's probably, if it were to happen, at best, 5 years. 5 years down the line. But a lot of changes are going to be going on between then and now. Samsung's got a chance. They've got a lot of components in place that other manufacturers just don't. And so Samsung, if they play their cards right, I think could come out as another dominant player in this particular space. And to remind everybody, I really don't care who wins. I have no horse in this race, but there is no winner in a horse. I'm sorry. There's no winner in a horse. There's no winner in a race that never ends. That's very, very important to keep in mind, especially when we're talking about technology. I want everybody to win, and ultimately, with better competition, with better products, everybody wins. Because when you don't have competition in the marketplace, that's when we end up with really horrific experiences, because there's no need to make something better. And believe you me, I've been at the sharp end of that stick over and over and over again. Like Patreon, I'm very grateful. Yeah, I'm gonna say something that I don't know if I should say in this video. I'm very happy about having my patrons, absolutely. But Patreon as a platform it's bad. It's horrible. Don't believe the public numbers that you see on Patreon.com, because they're lies. They're outright lies. Patreon is lying to the public. I love my super nomies. I love my patrons. I will have to, unfortunately, continue. When I have to say that, that's bad. I will happily use Patreon to engage with my supporters that way. I know you're all my supporters. You're watching this video that deeply. Super nomies, they're the patrons. You're my nomies because you're just you. Thank you for supporting me that way. But I have to use their platform to be able to provide different types of benefits to people who give me a little more. I want to give them a little more. I'm very happy to do that. But Patreon as a platform has zero competition. Zero. And it needs... I've told them directly that they've got problems. A lot of problems that I've reported, and they just continue to lie to people. They lie to content creators, and they lie to people who see the service from the outside in. Or the inside out. No competition! Ow. I think I pulled a muscle. Wow, that's a first. Man moves arm in live YouTube video and pulls a muscle. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for asking the question. Keep asking questions. I love talking. And if you don't like listening to a nerd or a geek talk about something at length like this, then I am not the person that you want to be following. So thank you if you are following me. Thank you if you're one of my super nomies. Thank you if you're just one of my nomies, because I do love you. I appreciate you. But at this point, I'm going to leave you to your own devices.